Hello, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Background Information. We're doing an Angels and Demons um, piece again, and we're finally finishing the stuff on Satan and Lucifer. Hopefully, you'll find this interesting. It is about fiction and stuff, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, let's just get into it because I'll have the profile at the end. Okay, so I'll be honest, I don't actually remember half of your angel names or care. Same way you guys don't care how many different ways I'm portrayed to humans in their media. I mean, they aren't really me, just facets, so if any of them got all of me down, you'd be scared. Quote from Cruel Temptations. For this part, not only will I produce the shortest profile of Lucifer as they appear within the veil, but it's mostly where we get to talk about the literature. In fact, Lucifer in fiction is where we see the conflation of Satan and Lucifer into the same being, and why these days the names are deemed interchangeable, and why some sources will refer to Lucifer or Samael as the angelic names of Satan before the fall. This is where the story of the fall of the Antichrist, the actual wicked deeds and dealings of the devil, come to the fore. And really, there are endless sources of the devil in fiction and media, and they're what creates the devil you know. Thinking about it, when you watch a historical movie that's blatantly filled with fictitious ideas of the being and their sayings, when you actually read about the being, you've already got a conflated, then actually read about the being, you've already got a conflated idea of what they look like and act like. Just as when someone mentions Emperor Nero, everyone tends to think of him as this trouble fiddle playing idiot whilst Rome's on fire, or in my case, literally Peter Ustinov and Quo Vadis. You see how easily you'll associate, and well, that's also the case with the devil. In fact, thinking of the constant links of Nero as the Antichrist, there's this idea of the devil playing a fiddle, and well, Nero is where the image comes from. So we're going to cover a lot in this, in as short amount of time as possible. We'll discuss Dante's Inferno, Paradise Lost, Faust, Old Harry's Game, Lucifer, and Constantine. I was originally going to talk about Futurama as well, but then I thought, the Robot Devil's too fun. Why these in particular? Well, these are my big inspirations for my Lucifer Satan, and well, everyone else can probably point to a story or television show that has developed their ideas of Lucifer or Satan, and well, this is my inspiration. So, firstly, Dante's Inferno is one of the big pieces where Lucifer and Satan are not separate beings, and I will note in the previous ones I did think they were the same being, they were separate beings, but it turns out some translations have it as Satan and some translations have it as Lucifer. So, yeah, that's me not reading into it as much as I should have because I was just, when you do your bits, sometimes you just glance over. Anyway, not separate beings, in fact, this is probably one of the first times they're equated together. But within it, we're given the description of hell and what happens within it, as well as a description of the circles. In this, Satan sits in the ninth circle, the circle of treachery, where he has three heads, three mouths, bat-like wings that beat a cold wind to keep the place frozen, and is basically frozen himself. He is permanently chewing Judas, Cassius, and Brutus, three big traitors that were well known at the time, and is trapped where he is, ruler of hell, but at the same time not really visibly governing it as in later fictions. In fact, Dante's Inferno tells us that Satan's punishment was for trying to have equal power to the divine, a voice of equal measure, and yet frozen and permanently chewing, he was muted. He is muted and unable to wield whatever strength he had. It's a poetic justice that even makes Satan weep whilst he chews. It's certainly a stark image, and as poetic justice is the key to this, it certainly makes it obvious that Satan deserves this punishment, and that he is being punished. It doesn't give him the dominion he seeks, and doesn't show him to have much power. He is buried at the bottom of the heap, and that's what he deserves. One of the other interesting aspects of Dante's circles is that it shares a lot of similarities to Islamic belief that there are levels of hell, and the lowest level is for the worst offenders against the Most High. Certainly, some of the descriptions of Satan in this is an interesting match for descriptions of Iblis, and the story of Satan is that of Lucifer, aka Lucifer. Now, previously I mentioned Dante didn't equate Lucifer and Satan as the same thing, and I am wrong on that. Certain translations negate the name Lucifer and straight up use Satan, so I was an idiot there, and I do apologise for making that statement, and will make a note of it on that video. So sorry. From Dante, the idea of a Satan limited in power, miserable in hell, and certainly trapped in an endless cycle is quite a curious thought. Certainly, the theme that Satan is unhappy with his remit in hell is not a new concept, but with Dante, there's the poetic justice that he has no way of escaping it, whether he'd want to or not. In Milton's Paradise Lost, however, Satan is the protagonist, and certainly it's a twist on the situation, that we should recognise and sympathise with Satan only to see how far he will go for revenge. Certainly in Paradise Lost, Lucifer and Satan are separate beings. Lucifer is a demon of pride, but he's separate to Satan and even talks at the council with the others. Milton does a great job of developing Lucifer's fellows and the situation with Adam and Eve, and well, it's a great poem. In Paradise Lost, we meet Satan just after the fall, pulling his corpse up from the heap to witness the wonderfully abysmal kingdom he's just inherited, a place so miserable even the Almighty didn't have use for it. As Satan pulls himself up off the floor, he is joined by his steadfast companion Beelzebub, and they discuss what awaits them. And Satan's anger stirs as he realizes, abandoned here, they can make a heaven of hell, and that it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Then he turns to his army to rouse them, and howls out, "Awake, arise, or be forever fallen." Thus his troops move and his kingdom is made. But where some wish to remain and rule their homes, Satan wants revenge, the ultimate revenge, ruining the creation that was held above all things, and thus unfolds the temptation of Eve and the expulsion from Eden. In case you hadn't realised by now, Paradise Lost is my favourite poem. Once you learn how to read it, you can really enjoy how human Satan is before humans are like that, and how much spitefulness and rage and revenge can drive someone to ruin their lives, can ruin the lives of others. We see that for Satan, even when he has his kingdom in hell, it's not enough. He gets what he wants, but it's never going to be perfect until he has that revenge. And even after they are expelled, Satan returns to hell and his kingdom in seeming triumph. But Michael reveals hope for the future of mankind, and of course, Satan will never be content and always fighting. Read mostly with a focus upon Satan, we witness all his sins at play and all the dark things innocent Adam and Eve aren't supposed to, and of course reading Satan's spite is enjoyable. You can read it and empathise and relate to Satan, and then pull back when you see how far he's willing to go and how far you wouldn't. But overall, Satan proves he is still powerful, but still unable to prevent the power of the Almighty. So then we talk about the story that brings up deals with the devil and the introduction of the self-deprecating and curiously personable version of the devil. This is Mephistopheles. At first we're assuming he's just any usual devil summoned by Faust to offer him temptations. Now, initially Mephistopheles is associated with the devil, titled a shadow of Lucifer, and one of the four first angels to rebel. However, later understandings from this feature of Germanic folklore developed him as another facet of the devil, especially with some ideas that the deal with the devil comes through understanding interpretations of Faust. Now, Goethe's Faust is the main source for many, and certainly introduces the character with different tones and at different points, and not only drives the plot, but instead of being the bad guy in the background, he's unpredictable, inconsistent, because he's meant to be a contradiction to the something that is existence. It's in this role we start to get the idea of the character of the devil, that is not the king of hell able to do anything, but someone in a new role at odds with humanity and reality. The legends manifestations of the years have influenced the role of the devil in stories from this. The role starting to show something a little more recognisably human within him, and well, that makes him a character you enjoy having a presence in the tale. Although, of course, I will discuss Mephistopheles as an individual at some other time, because though the name these days is assumed another name for the devil, it's not always. So now we're out of the more classic tales of the devil in fiction that have influenced what I've developed, as well as about anyone else, I'd say. When we then come to the more modern interpretations. Now, I'll keep the next two brief because they're interconnected, and it's more to do with performance in one and the impression it leaves rather than the humanity or likability of Lucifer. So we'll talk about the movie Constantine from 2005. Now, the devil has appeared in lots of different media and film by this point, from comedy to horror, and I could talk about them, but they didn't stand out in my mind like Peter Stormare in this role. According to some of those little fact of the day things on social media platforms, apparently he asked for the white suit and the feet covered in tar, and well, it's a very disquieting look, but the best performance in the whole film. Let's face it, there have been better versions of Constantine since this, but the devil arrives because Constantine is dying, and he's very pleased to take the exorcist's soul. We see a devil that is vindictive and rather enjoys their role, perhaps, and as disquieting and disturbing, he revels in the chance to collect it. He's surprisingly polite and he's amusing, and well, he steals the entire scene as a great version of the devil should. As a good version of the devil should. But the most wonderful part of this, Constantine seemingly strikes a deal with him, referring to the devil's son in the movie, Mammon, and the devil just tuts and muses over it all. He knows Constantine is a con artist, but the sudden thought that Mammon might have something irks him to respond. He is prideful and very quick to deal with the issue, manipulated by Constantine perhaps, but certainly showing that he's overpowered and likes to be the one to win the argument his way. Of course, he doesn't want Constantine's soul as he wanted, but the depiction and the fact the entire scene steals the movie is what feels right. Someone utterly enjoying being as wicked as they could be, as dangerous as they could be, and yet also perfect. A devil that is personable, malevolent, disquieting, overpowered, and yet still so vulnerable from their pride and how they will get what they want. It's very enjoyable and very inspiring for writing this kind of figure. Then we discussed the series Lucifer and the wonderful Tom Ellis playing a devil that gets more human the longer he's out of hell, and overall has the most fun he can. The fact he ends up becoming the other in what could easily be laid out as a sort of odd buddy cop series is even more hilarious. It does have the inevitable love storyline, but it certainly became its own thing and very enjoyable. It introduced a different take on heaven and hell, a mother to the angels, and a lot more chaos that was slowly starting to affect Earth. Its premise, well, Lucifer had gotten fed up of hell and left it. This is in itself inspired as an alternative of Lucifer Morningstar as he appeared within the DC Comics. And particularly in the Sandman series, it's very enjoyable, and certainly a lot happens that just make you enjoy everything Lucifer does, and ultimately root for a character you otherwise would not. It certainly produces a more human and also more redeemable devil to other media, and gives the relationships between God and the devil a much more interesting layer that makes the fall and everything more complicated, but more of a family drama leading to cosmic consequences for all. Now, all of these are big aspects and influences towards how I've developed my demons and their interactions within the Veil, as well as for Lucifer's development within my Veil universe. However, the biggest inspiration is actually a radio series from BBC Radio 4, written by the amazing Andy Hamilton, with him starring as the devil, and it's called Old Harry's Game. Now, if you like satire, you can stand some aged aspects and things that don't sit as well as they did between 1995 and 2012, although these are minor. It's something I actually grew up listening to and enjoying. The series initially revolves around Satan and the recent arrival of the Professor, who's only in hell because he doesn't believe in God. Through the episodes, the Professor tries to portray humanity as something good, and Satan tries to make him reject the idea through showing him a more real look at the world. Though Satan often appears to be proven right, something always happens that rather proves him wrong. As the series progresses and sadly the Professor no longer appears, it becomes about overcrowding, and Satan initially tries to make humanity take a look at themselves because everyone is by this point all hellbound. Then the final series introduces a new character whom he encourages to tell the true story of himself, and well, it never quite works out. Each episode is hilarious, but still pulls onto some of the iconic aspects of Satan's portrayals and characterizations. He transforms into different things to spook different people. He delights in the irony of his torments. He is bitter about everything around God, and often God comes to visit and is pretty mean to him, although he tries to manipulate situations to work with him all the same. He has hatred for humanity, and though he doesn't do the deals due to their usual poor results, sadistically is visible. One of my favourite, one of the cleverest episodes is when they discuss poetry and ambiguity, and they search for W.B. Yeats and figuring out if the slouching beast might possibly be a teenage camel. They enter the writer's block. Through this episode, Satan not only makes the point that writers are bitter people, but he comments on all the depictions of himself through humans, resulting in one film being cancelled due to an incident involving puff adders and Wi-Fi. We learn how much Satan hates ambiguity. Overall, the episodes present a humorous, sadistic, enjoyable Satan that sometimes you're on the side of for being stuck in a job he really doesn't like, to deserving what he gets because he still tries to manipulate and work against humanity as a whole. It's not only enjoyable, but it feels more personal, and it has helped me develop my Satan that's embittered but fun, and certainly using the opportunities given to remain trapped in the cut your nose to spite cut your nose off to spite your face mindset. So here's the briefest profile for Lucifer, Satan in my universe. So name, Lucifer, Satan, position, fallen angel, emperor of hell. Story featured in several particularly ambitious aim. Role, antagonist generally. Gender, agender often appearing as both. Description, Lucifer's appearances vary, but some of their most common traits is a slightly brilliant blue eyes that when you look into have no warmth in them. There's always a smell of sulphur around them. Realm hell. Abilities, almost absolute power, except they cannot harm children under the age of 15 or anyone with a mental level below such, and must make deals with with contracts. They cannot freely use power on mortals, and without the mortals being welcoming to it, unlike other demons. Master likes to think it's themselves, but they are still put beneath the Almighty. Personality, embittered, sarcastic, sadistic, cynical, hateful, vengeful, depressive, dismissive, narcissistic, and believe that they really are owed everything. They hate to be forgotten, but also hate to be blamed. They do not accept consequences for their actions, but lead reasonably well, and despite the fact they are rebellious, it is only to the rules of others. Their rules they enforce violently, and they don't really care about those beneath them being loyal because they haven't got a choice. Lucifer cannot forgive or admit fault. Relations, the only relationship of true importance is with the Almighty, their Creator, whom they loathe entirely, blame all their problems on, but secretly wish they still cared about them. They have mostly antagonistic or dominating relationships with others, where mostly they hate everyone who fought against them for being against them, hates everyone who followed them because they failed, and because they complain about it, hates Belial, but needs them because they're both a sycophant, but also one of the only ones that genuinely cares. They hate Michael, but still appreciate. They want to forgive them, and probably the only person they have any sense of respect for is Beelzebub, because they alone seem to understand their feelings. So history. The first created angel from the thoughts of the Almighty. They were the first, and for a time seemed their favoured creation. No one's ear was closer to the Almighty, and Lucifer asked them all the questions that could be asked to know everything and that could be done and would be done. They were content watching the world be shaped and helping it shape, and knew that the Almighty was building for something wonderful. But Lucifer thought it would be allowing the angels to have dominion over earth and live there. Lucifer and Michael often spent time in one another's company and worked together, and were very close watching the animals in Eden, and during this time Lucifer had asked why the angels did not have the power to create anything. The Almighty insisted that the angels were not ready for responsibility. Were not ready for the responsibility to create, and Lucifer takes this the wrong way, feeling conflicted because they have had such responsibilities of guarding the world for so long. Then Lucifer and Michael discuss this and do something unnatural for angels. In the Almighty's kingdom, there is always the sensation of love, and they all know this as this parental familiar love, but Michael and Lucifer feel a different kind of love for me than they dare to kiss. However, in doing so, a seed falls from their lips and grows in the centre of the garden into a dominating tree. The Almighty is angered by them and separates them. Michael knows consequences and makes penance, but Lucifer has felt the power of creation and does not repent. For a long time, they feel that the Almighty's voice is not to Gabriel's ear, is now to Gabriel's ear, and Lucifer feels jealousy for Gabriel and for the ability to create, and then they realise something is developing in the world outside of Eden. They witness the development of human-like beings, and upon spying on a few, one recognizes them and by accident falls and dies. This being is aware of the divine, and thus the angels of death are suddenly awakened. Lucifer, though, brings them to heaven, but finds them trapped by the gates, forced to wait until the Almighty has service of them. And the angels are distraught, and the Almighty is angered, but has done the unthinkable and returned the life and made it forget having seen Lucifer. This goes against the usual rules of life on earth, and Lucifer complains only that the Almighty can do no wrong, and thus they find themselves turned against them. Lucifer gathers others, feeling frustrated with the change, and especially at the news that the Almighty will create the perfect being to live in Eden. Feeling that they have all been overlooked and underappreciated, Lucifer draws them into a war against the Almighty, but the coup fails, and Lucifer and their cohorts are thrown from heaven and down into hell. But here Lucifer builds a kingdom, and learning of Adam and Lilith, he sends his demons out to convince her to stay away, and another to convince the new wife of Adam to make them both betray the Almighty. With them out of Eden, they are now subject to Lucifer's powers and followers, and so Lucifer spends their time controlling their hordes and urging humans to go against the Almighty over and over. There's a brief time where they expel the younger demons led by Baal for trying to overthrow them, but as Baal seeks to take over himself and the Almighty's angels request assistance, Lucifer makes it clear that their battle will be won their way, and thus when Baal is made mortal by Lucifer tricking them, Lucifer drags their soul to hell to fall eternally. But aside from that, Lucifer rarely comes to earth and often listens and watches. Final comments. Sorry I had to keep it so trimmed, but they are a character with a lot to them, and I know this probably sounded like an odd episode, so I hope you understand and don't mind me just there. Thank you. Thank you for listening.